Americans have cast more than 32 million votes so far this election cycle, as turnout in most states is keeping pace with record levels of the 2018 midterms. As the New York Times reports, quote, the high energy before Election Day, while offering hints of hope for both parties as they look to glean any signs of strength or weakness, reflects how the nation's voting behaviors have entered uncharted terrain since the pandemic and the Trump-fueled chaos of the 2020 election. The Times continues, Republicans are largely faring better across the country, with early vote totals running ahead of their 2020 levels in battleground states like Nevada and Florida, as well as in deep blue states like California. But in states with major races for Senate and governor like Pennsylvania and Arizona, Democrats' early vote count is also around the same level or higher than it was 2 years ago. Let's bring in Andrea Haley. She's the CEO of the voter registration platform, Vote.org. And it's good to have you on the show. Does that match up with what you're seeing, and what can you add to what we know so far?
Absolutely. It definitely matches up to what we're seeing. I think one of the interesting things to remember is that early voting laws have also changed in many states. So from 2018 to now, we have drastically different laws. In 2020, we had a big opening up of early voting, and then we had a wave of voter suppression laws in some states that then rolled back early voting. So the direct comparisons are very difficult.
Any sense of what you're getting, for example, about the youth vote or women voting?
We're definitely seeing huge spikes at Vote.org in registration of young women and of young people in general. And we're starting to see in these early vote numbers that translate into, action at the ballot box. So to see that actually happening in real time is pretty exciting for our program. But I think people are participating. Young people are participating. I think there are a lot of issues on the ballot that people deeply care about.
You have to be encouraged, don't you, Andrea, regardless of your party, by the vast numbers of people voting early. Look at a place like Georgia, where they're already seeing record numbers of early vote, a place where there have been concerns about voter suppression in the past. Clearly, people are getting their votes out now. What does that tell you about Georgia, where the race is so close?
I think it tells us about the determination of American people to overcome any obstacles that are put in their way. At the end of the day, a lot of the voter suppression laws are meant to exhaust people, to wear them out of the process. And what we're seeing all across the nation, and especially in Georgia, is that that's not happening. People are sticking to their guns and saying that they're going to participate in this election and that they're showing up anyway. So I think that's exciting, and I think the record numbers will, continue all the way through Election Day.
So, Andrea, you mentioned Georgia, a state that imposed new voter restrictions, but hasn't seemingly impacted the number of people being able to vote so far. Are there other states, though, that you are seeing that pass similar laws where the vote total is down at this point?
We're really actually seeing people jump through the hoops anyway. I think there's a lot of voter education about those laws and about what was happening. If there's one thing the American people don't like, it's taking it right away from them. And so sometimes some of these laws can have a backlash effect. I do think that a lot of them are also death by 1,000 paper cuts, though, in the sense that they're trying to take out 10,000 people at a time, 15,000 people at a time with small, minutia. And so there's a law in Texas and one in Georgia, a wet signature law that seems really boring. But actually, it makes it so you can't register online using your, cell phone or your mobile phone. That affects young voters. That kind of thing shaves off small numbers of people at a time, and that's, where we're really concerned and where we try to make sure that voters have the assistance they need to get through the process.
And again, we talked about different states. Something that you were saying before we came on. There just doesn't seem to be any overarching theme line. Usually you have one party or another seeing the enthusiasm move, but you say the lines are just jagged. It's impossible to predict.
Yeah, it's really difficult to predict. We saw after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, nationwide we saw about a 300% uptick in registrations, but in 10 states we saw over a 500% uptick in registrations. In Kansas, we saw 1,000% uptick in registrations. So this election cycle has been a really unique one.
Interesting. CEO of Vote.org, Andrea Haley, thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you
for coming on this morning.